my name's Jared. Welcome to Craft with Jared. Today I'm going to show you how to do the purl stitch, also known as the stocking stitch. So previously we did the garter stitch. So this is how the purl stitch looks. It's not as wavy as the garter stitch. You see how the garter stitch has waves? This is a more closely packed stitch and they make little V's, if you can see. So I thought it would be fun today to go through this tutorial with my brother Keegan, because he doesn't know how to knit. So I want to show him how to do the stocking stitch and he can do it with us and follow along and ask questions about all the basics that somebody doesn't know how to knit would ask. Say hi, Keegan.
Hello guys, my name is Keegan, and as Jared told you, and yeah, I'm excited to learn how to knit today. We'll try something new. I've done it before a little bit, but I never really got into it. And yeah, I think it's going to be fun to see what Jared does, how he does it, and mosey along with all of that stuff.
Why didn't you get into knitting? Because I remember Mom taught both you and I, but I stuck with it and you didn't stick with it.
Well, there's two reasons, because you've got to sit and focus on the knitting, and you can't, for me, I couldn't watch TV and knit at the same time. And then the second reason was we were doing it for school and we wouldn't get any rewards for having the most. So I didn't find the point in doing it because the other class always won, and then I know it was for a good cause, but as a child you want to get the prize, so that's why I didn't do it. Yes.
So he's selfish. So with the purl stitch, how it works is that you do knit stitch and a purl stitch, but you do one row purl, one row knit, one row purl, one row knit. You can't get both sides of the square to look as a purl, so one side would be purl, one side would be knit, and that's just how the purl square looks. If you want both sides to look purl, you do two squares and you just sew them together. But we'll get into that, I'll show you how it goes. So we're going to cast on 28 stitches. And if you'd like to learn how you do the knit stitch, please watch my previous video in the patchwork series.
Link in the description.
So the equipment we're going to need today is going to be our knitting needles. I've got a 5mm knitting needle.
Mine is a 4.5.
Then we're going to need our wool. I've chosen 100% double knit white acrylic wool.
Mine's purple.
It's 100% acrylic as well, double knit, and purple or maroon, one of those colors.
Isn't maroon more of a blue?
Isn't it ready? Is it like a maroon is a ready?
I think that's close to maroon, yeah.
Why was I thinking maroon is blue?
Then we need our darning needles to sew in the ends at the end of the project. Measuring tape, so we can get the size and the width of our square, because we want to have a nice perfect square. And the last thing will be our scissors, big or small, just to snip off the ends at the end. And a beverage, so you can have tea, coffee, hard liquor, we're not judging.
Okay, how much do I take off? Why are you taking so much?
Because we're going to be knitting. So our first step is make a slip knot. Do you remember how to make a slip knot? You just take your wool, wrap it around your fingers, and pull. Here we go. So let's just do that again quickly. You're going to put your fingers like this. You're going to take your wool, wrap it around so it looks like that. So it's like a little V. Thumb in. Turn your fingers out like that. Grab your working yarn, not the tail, and just pull the tail.
My first one I made was just a fluke. I just wrapped and pulled it.
Okay. But there is also an example of casting on in my previous video as well. So the normal casting on, slip knots, and casting off, you can see in the previous video.
Is that too long for mine?
That is very long. That is very, very long. Sorry, so you put your rest needle in your non-dominant hand and your working needle in your dominant hand.
Okay.
So we're going to cast on 28 stitches. So remember, there is a tutorial of casting on in my previous video, but I'll do a quick one so Keegan can learn. So you slip
I can't
into
slip
the
it in,
loop.
it's too tight.
So don't tighten it so much. So
Okay.
slip it in. Then you're going to take your working yarn, so it goes behind it.
Okay, like that.
Yeah. Working yarn. So if you want to get rid of this tail, just hold it in your wrist hand. Behind the needles. So you always want to work behind the needles. You don't want to...
Okay.
Okay, then you wrap it around the working needle.
Why do you want to work behind the needles?
So it doesn't get in front here and it distracts you or gets tangled.
Okay.
So wrap it around your needle, your
Yes.
working needle. Push down with your index finger. Go out and put it on top.
And then pull.
Yes. Not too tight. To see how you're not putting it too tight, you can just put your needle in between there and pull. You could put your needle in between the two loops and just pull, so to make sure you're not putting too tight. Okay, so now we have our 2 loops. Now we're going to continue casting on until we have 28. So we're going to put our needle in between our 2 loops. So in between the loops.
Okay. And then do what we did before.
Yes. Then you just wrap around, pull out, put on top. 28 times.
It went in between the...
That's why you hold it out of the way with your finger.
No, in between that. It went in between the string.
So you know how yours is squeaking like that. It's because you're busy pulling too tight.
I don't want to get cold in the winter.
You don't want to make holes. When I have a tight knit.
Tighten it so we don't get cold in the winter. Okay, and then both.
In between that V.
Okay.
So you go in between the V. And then you shove it in.
It wasn't going. Okay, and
Then you pull. Like you go around your work needle. In the
Like
front
that?
here. Push down. And then as you push down, you turn your work so you can see. And you lift it up. And then you put it on. We have casted on our 28 stitches. The next thing we are going to do is our first row. How far is it?
18.
18. Stragglers get left behind. So once we have our 28 stitches, we're going to start our first row. So with the garter stitch in the previous video, what you would do with the first row is you'd go in from the bottom. But with the stocking stitch, you're going to go in from the top. So garter stitch is bottom behind, stocking stitch is top in front. So you see the working needle now is on top, so you're going to go at the top, you're going to go slip into it on the top. But bring your work in front of you. So with this first one, just hold your work in front of you and go in from the top. Right. Then, now the work is in front of us, we're going to go around the work needle from the top. You're going to push down and grab off. Okay, let's do that again. You're going to go in from the top. You're going to go around the work needle. You're going to push it down with your thumb. So it's not the index finger now, it's the thumb. Then you're going to just pull the needle up to grab the working yarn and just pull up, and the loop should come off with you. So do you see how close my loops are to the front? Just be careful you don't drop any stitches. So they're all in the front there. So we're going to do another one. We're going to go down into the loop, go around the working needle, push with your thumb and pull up. Down, around, push with your thumb and pull up. So now we've got 4 stitches that we've done. And we're going to just carry on with that, just that way. So we have 3 stitches left. So remember, you go in the loop from the top. So you're going in front of your rest needle, around and pull up. From the top, around and pull up. Top, around and pull up. And we've done our first row.
Like that.
Yeah. It looks a bit shaggy. So once we have done our first row of stocking stitch, our next row is going to be the garter stitch. So I'm going to quickly show you the garter stitch, but I did make a whole video on the garter stitch. It was last week's video, so please check the description for that video link on how to do the garter stitch. So remember, I'll just do quick 3 stitches with you. So remember the stocking was we're going down. Now we're going up behind the working needle.
Sorry, between the 2 or only the 1?
In the loop. So we're going to go in the loop behind the knitting needle. Then you're going to go around with your and push down with your index finger, then pull up.
Take the thing off again.
Yeah. Around, down, and up. Remember, you're going into the loop behind the rest needle. So I'll meet you back once we're done the row of garter stitch. Remember, if you don't know how to do the garter stitch, please watch last week's video in the patchwork blanket series. There was a whole square on how to do the garter stitch. It's a very quick and easy fun stitch.
It's okay so far. I've made a mistake, so I had to pull the thing apart. I've noticed that the needle goes between the wool quite often, which is a little bit irritating, but you see, not too bad, I don't think.
A way that you can actually help yourself to make the needle not go between the 2 things. So when you get practice, you use your index finger on your rest needle as almost a guide. So you're feeling each loop. And then as you go in, so you're holding the loop with your index finger, as you go in, you actually open that loop up.
Okay.
Sorry guys, Mufasa is just taking the show here.
Yeah.
So you just feel.
But so far so good. I'm enjoying it.
Mufasa, would you decide where you want to sit? My goodness.
He wants both of us.
Stop being a greedy bit.
Leave that.
So once we have done our second row, which is the garter stitch, we're going to do the stocking stitch again. But don't worry, I'm going to give the written pattern for this in the description. But just know, 1 row is your purl, 1 row is your knit. P, K, P, K. But that will be in the description, and we're doing that 18 times. So yeah, now we're going to start with our 3rd row, which is the stocking stitch. And I thought I'd tell you a story of when Keegan and I were younger and my mom taught us how to knit. It was one time I watched him and his needles were stuck like that, and he just took the needles and he ripped the wool in half and he broke his work, and he's like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I had a lot of outbursts with the knitting, especially when we were busy knitting and the needles were too tight together, so you couldn't really move it around. And like I said, with all the hardships that I had with it, that's why I stopped doing it, because either the needles were too tight, or one of these things fell off while you were busy doing it, and then you'd have a hole, and then if you pull it to try and pull it up, then you make a line down or an even bigger hole, and a drop stitch. And yeah, I remember it, and yeah, I liked doing it at school. I don't know if you guys remember, where you had that tube and it had the 4 nails in.
French knitting.
French knitting. That was fun. I enjoyed doing French knitting.
What's in Afrikaans? Tolletjie brei.
In Afrikaans it's called tolletjie brei. So a tolletjie is a willy, and brei is like a braid. So it's woolly braid.
But tol can also be like something that you spin things around.
Oh.
So I think that's where it's coming from. But tolletjie or tollie means penis.
So there's another story. Would you stop? Look at him. Guys, do you see this? Will you quit?
Look at his face.
My goodness. On the topic of cats, I would like to...
What topic of cats?
With him, look at him. Because we were talking about Mufasa. Stop it. My goodness, Mufasa.
How up?
How old? When my brother and I were younger, we found this one cat on the street. We were busy walking home. What? Berry, remember we found Berry and brought her home. So what happened was the bus for school used to drop us off by the park and we'd walk home. And we found this one cat. She was a black fluffy cat and we named her Berry. Didn't have a collar on though.
Or a chip.
Or a chip. We did take her to the vet to get scanned for the chip. Look, she didn't have the chip, she didn't have the collar, and we adopted a new cat. But she stayed with us. She didn't run away, she stayed with us.
We had her for about a year.
Yeah, and then she left.
It was someone else's cat. We did steal it eventually. We didn't know we were stealing it.
Yes, we were very young.
We were very young.
Yes.
And then it was someone's cat, but we had no idea.
We were in grade 2 when we found her, so we didn't know we were stealing. She was a stray, we loved her.
But we've got a myriad of cats and dogs. Not dogs, I'm lying to you, of pets.
Well, we have a dog. I've got one dog.
We've got one dog, but we've got quite a few pets, to be honest. I mean, we've got the 2 cats here, which are Jared's cats. And then we've got the 3 cats at my place. We've got 2 bunnies and a whole host of fish. And then Jared's got 3
Rats.
Dumbo rats.
Dumbo rats, they're so cute, so the ears come out over here instead of going out on top of the head.
You don't have to do that.
That's what I mean.
But yeah, we've got lots. We're an animal loving family. We've got hosts of animals. We love them all to bits. Maybe one day we can, or not we, Jared, can sit and show you all of his pets and ask for video chat with me, and then I can show you my pets because I love my bunnies and cats to bits.
I need your consent on a few items to continue.
What?
No, Bixby.
What happened there?
Jared says I didn't. That's when I was busy explaining of it going in between the threads and not in the loop, like stabbing through the wool.
So he didn't pick up his whole loop. He picked up half of the, actually went in between, like, there's a whole piece of wool and he actually went in between that wool and just picked up half the loop.
So now what? I'm not going back.
No, just carry. You can take it apart if you really want to.
No.
But I mean, as like I said in the previous video, knit to have fun. These kind of mistakes give your work character.
No, because then you now put a bed, not a bed. This is for a blanket on your bed, and it looks like something has attacked your blanket because it's filled with holes and misshaped stuff. And now you're knitting to have fun, but you don't want to show anyone you're knitting to have fun because.
Well, you can show yourself the blanket. See. You're supposed to be holding your needles in both your hands.
I am holding it in both hands.
You're busy holding it like this. Like you've got your wool here and you're just like busy.
Because I balance it and then I put my thing on top.
No, but you don't need to look how I'm doing it. So you put your needle in and you don't need to balance it. Even if I let it go, you don't need to balance it.
No, but I put it there so this doesn't come off.
So once we have done our last row, our square should look like this. It's purl on one side. So you see how it's that V pattern, and knit on the other side. So once we've got all of our stitches, we've got still 28, you count 28, right length, where you can measure, remember, line it up like this, and when it all lines up nicely, then you know it's right. We are going to start casting off. So casting off is the same method in last week's video. Knit 2. So 1, 2, normal knit, garter. Remember, when I say knits, I'm referring to the garter stitch. You do 2, then you're going to hold your working yarn a bit tight, and the correct terminology for tight is taut, but we're going to hold it tight in the one hand. You're going to stick your needle in, and you're going to pull the last loop over the first loop, and you're going to just carry on doing that. Knit 1, pull the last loop over the first loop, knit another one, pull the last loop over the first loop. Remember, don't pull too tight, don't make your loops too tight, because you're going to get a divot. It's going to get concaved like that on the top. But for a more detailed way of how to cast off, you can look at last week's video, the normal basic easy garter stitch. It is the last few minutes of that video. Okay, so we're left with our last stitch. What we do, we snip off the end. Just snip off the end. So now we have our square. Make that loop a bit bigger and just pass that loop through the other, pass the thread through the loop. So let me do that again. So you make your loop a bit bigger. My loop's a bit bigger now. Then I'm going to take that loose piece of strand, I'm going to pass it through the loop and just give it a gentle tug. And there's our square. Now the only step we need to do now is weave these ends into the square.
Can you burn it with a lighter?
No, you can't.
No, but to melt it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. So you do get wool that is like, what's that plastic?
Nylon.
Nylon. I think you get wool that has some nylon in it, and I'm sure acrylic as well will also burn like that.
This says acrylic on the...
Yeah, the acrylic will burn like a plasticky type almost. But you can't really burn it because you're going to burn it all the way to the edge here, and you're going to have a black plastic knob. And then it's hard, like it's hard and it's dangerous. Don't burn your wool, it's dangerous. Don't do this. Okay, so with your last one, you're going to snip off the end. So you're going to snip off about that much at the end. You're going to hold your square, so hold your needle, just the needle in your one hand. You're going to make this loop a bit bigger, so you're going to just pull, just so it's a bit bigger the loop. Take your needle out, pass the loose thread through the loop.
Forward or backwards.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
So he did make a few mistakes, as you can see. Oh, and what he did as well, he ended off with 32 stitches.
Yeah.
So we started with 28 and he had 32 stitches. The last step that we need to do is we must weave in. And it's important when you have the knit and purl, you start weaving in from the purl side, not the knit side, because if you do it from the knit side, you're going to see the strand that you weaved in. So when weaving in with your stocking stitch, you have your stocking stitch side and you've got your knit side. And it's important when weaving in, you weave in from the stocking stitch side. So this is facing you and you're weaving in. And to get a tutorial of how to weave in, please watch my last week video, how to create an easy garter square. If you don't understand how to weave in after watching the garter stitch video, please just leave a comment and let me know, and I'll make a whole video about weaving in. But I want to show you the finished product of the squares. So I haven't weaved in my ends yet, but I want to show you my square and Keegan's square. So here's mine, and there's Keegan's square. Well, yours is a rectangle, it's not a square.
Yes.
So here's my square and Keegan's a rectangle. Did you enjoy doing this?
I enjoy doing it. It does take very, very long. And I've made a few mistakes on mine that Jared explained to me how. I didn't even realize I was making the mistakes. But overall, if you want to pass the time and you've got nothing else to do,
That's not true. Then you can, if you've got things to do and you want to be relaxed.
no.
That's
But
fine.
the only thing is, like, staring at it while knitting was making my eyes water.
So you remember to blink.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yes, if you guys still would like more clarity on how to do the stocking stitch, please leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Like this video
And subscribe.
and subscribe. Happy knitting. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.